It's no secret that the Pittsburgh Steelers are hunting a wide receiver to trade for before the NFL trade deadline this year. So today we're going to be breaking down the latest Steelers wide receiver trade rumors right here on Steelers Talk. My name is Jack Sperry, your host. And make sure you guys stick around here because we're going to be talking about Kupp, Deebo Samuel, and even Garrett Wilson at the end of today's show. So make sure you guys stay tuned to get the latest around these wide receivers. But before we get into the content today, when the con artist strikes and when this trade happens, I do think that the Steelers will end up trading for a receiver at some point. Make sure you guys are subscribed because when that breaking news hits, we're going to go live and we're going to be partying it up right here on Steelers Talk. Hopefully, they get a good name to add to this wide receiver room this year. So first, guys, the first name I want to talk about here is the guy that might be the most likely to be traded to the Steelers, and it's Mike Williams. And the reason why he's the most likely to be named a Steeler, or not named, traded to the Steelers, is because the Steelers were interested in him in free agency. The Jets are openly shopping him, and I don't think that he's going to be overly expensive because of his injury history. Take a look at Adam Schefter here, what he had to say about the discussions that the Steelers and Jets have been having. This came out before the Steelers and Jets played on Sunday Night Football. He said the Jets and Steelers decided to table any substantive discussions about wide receiver Mike Williams until next week after the two teams play tonight, talking about Sunday Night Football, according to league sources. So Adam Schefter confirms that Omar Khan and the Steelers have been in communication with the New York Jets regarding a potential trade for Mike Williams. Now, as I'm recording this video, I think that this trade could happen at any moment, and honestly, the sooner the better for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The sooner that they end up making this trade, if they want Mike Williams, the sooner they can get him in the building, and if they make this trade by Tuesday, they can get him into a Steelers uniform and get him into practice by Wednesday, and potentially he could be playing on Monday Night Football versus the New York Giants. And I definitely think this is something that Steelers fans should be keeping their eye out for this week. So you take a look at what I kind of project a Williams trade to look like. I think it would be about a 7th-round pick. All right, maybe it's a conditional 6th that can go down to a 7th. I just don't think it's going to cost all that much because Williams is getting older. He has not been productive this season, and he has an injury history that's a bit concerning. Plus, he's on a 1-year contract. So there's not a whole lot about Mike Williams that makes his price go up. So I think that the Jets right now want to openly get rid of him, and they want to send him to a place that will actually use him in their offense, even though he did have one catch on Sunday Night Football on a 4th down, actually, I think it was, against the Steelers. But I think that they'll probably take a 7th-round pick, and if the Steelers decide to pull the trigger, this is certainly a price that I would be okay with. But personally here, I wouldn't trade for Williams. I would probably rather be patient. I would wait closer to the deadline when some of these teams that are selling are more active on the trade market, and I would get somebody that I think is maybe a bit more equipped to be available in January when hopefully the Steelers are playing football in the playoffs and help this team potentially make a run for a Lombardi trophy this year. And when I look at a guy like Mike Williams, of course you have to worry about the injuries. Of course you have to worry about the lack of production this year coming off of that ACL tear last year. And honestly, man, I think the Steelers can afford to be patient here with the receivers they currently have in the room. Now, Van Jefferson has not been very good this season, but you take a look here at what these guys have been, what these 3 receivers, these 3 weapons did with Russell Wilson under center against the Jets. George Pickens looked so much better and so much more engaged with Russ in there. Over 22 yards per catch for him. Calvin Austin III had a super explosive play. I expect those explosive plays to keep coming in droves with Russ under center. And then Pat Freiermuth has been a very reliable option as well, and he averaged over 25 yards per catch against the New York Jets on Sunday Night Football. So I think right now the Steelers and what they have right now is good enough to hold them off for a little bit. Also, not mentioned here is you got Najee and Jalen, your running backs that are both very reliable running back options. And, I think that Pittsburgh shouldn't be desperate to make a move right now for a receiver. Now, I think that the Steelers like Mike Williams, and they don't view this as a desperation move. So I do think that Mike Williams is maybe the most likely scenario for a trade for the black and gold. But personally, man, my preferred choice is DeAndre Hopkins from the Tennessee Titans. I mean, you watch D-Hop on film, he's maybe lost a quarter of a step, but athleticism has never really been the biggest part of his game. The biggest part of his game has always been great route running and, technical proficiency, matched with really big hands that create for a really large catch radius. And just super sticky hands and great 50-50 ball ability. We've seen Russell Wilson's ability to just loft up those passes, those 50-50 ball situations to George Pickens. Imagine having two of those kind of similar type of players on this offense by adding DeAndre Hopkins. I think that would certainly work out for Pittsburgh, and I'd certainly see the Tennessee Titans as a team that's going to be selling, especially because DeAndre Hopkins is on an expiring contract. He is getting older, and I think the Titans will probably want to get whatever kind of draft capital they can get out of him. So listen, man, I think that Hopkins at the end of the day does everything that Mike Williams does, only better, plus you get more. I think you get better route running. I think you get more out of DeAndre Hopkins than what you get out of Mike Williams. I think that with D-Hop, he's all about football. He is so locked into his craft and to the game. And I think that really fits with Mike Tomlin and his mentality and what he wants in a locker room. I think he'd be a great mentor to George Pickens, who is still young and a bit immature, if we're being completely honest. I think that DeAndre Hopkins is the right fit for this year's Steelers team. And I think the Steelers, if they have to wait a little bit and even pay a little bit more to get DeAndre, I'm willing to make that move and I'm willing to stay put in order to eventually get DeAndre Hopkins for something around a 5th-round pick. The Steelers have 2 5th-rounders this year. I think that the Titans, they're going to look at a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, and you look at what the NFL is going to see Hopkins as. He's aging. He's on an expiring contract. I mean, there's not, in terms of draft capital, I don't think that he's going to be that valuable on the trade market. Honestly, I think Omar Khan can fleece the Titans here out of D-Hop for a 5th-round pick. And I think that this could be a potential, season-altering move for Pittsburgh that just takes this offense to an even higher level than what we saw against the Jets on Sunday night. So pick a wide receiver for me down there in the comments section. Would you want to make the move right now for Mike Williams? Do you want to wait a little bit and get DeAndre Hopkins in a couple weeks or so? Or would you rather get a different receiver? Type O and then let me know which receiver you'd rather have down there in the comments section. For me personally, guys, you guys know my answer. I'm taking DeAndre Hopkins. I think that if you add 2 really, really good deep ball throwers to this offense, that's what I want to do. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Now, before we get into the rest of today's show, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Fanatics, where you guys can pick up a Russell Wilson Steelers jersey at a great price when you use the link chatsports.com/Russell. Put that in the comments and description of today's show if you want to pick up a Russell Wilson jersey today. No matter what receiver the Steelers end up trading for this year, Russell Wilson is most likely going to be the guy throwing them the passes, all right? So if you guys want to pick up a Russell Wilson jersey, make sure you go chatsports.com/Russ. If you click that link, they'll know that we sent you. So if you want to support the show and you want to get a Russell Wilson jersey, go ahead and use chatsports.com/Russ today. So now let's talk about these guys, because Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, and Garrett Wilson, 3 very big-name wide receivers, have been swirling in the NFL kind of trade rumor mill over the last several days. So let's go over the most recent rumors here from some pretty reputable people. So let's start with Ian Rappaport saying, when the flurry of trades happened on Tuesday, it led to more calls, including teams inquiring about Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp, sources say. Then we get to Deebo Samuel here, where Diana Rossini listed Deebo Samuel on a list of potential players that could be traded before the deadline. So Diana, I think, is very well connected to some of these teams. I think some of these teams would definitely like to add a Deebo Samuel if they potentially could, and the Niners are selling. Of course, they got an upcoming contract with Brock Purdy they got to pay for, so maybe they want to let go of Deebo. And then Adam Schefter comes in here and says, after the Jets' acquisition of Davante Adams, a select group of NFL teams have inquired into whether New York would be willing to trade fellow star wide receiver Garrett Wilson, league sources told ESPN. Now, to be clear here, I've been seeing a lot of people on Steelers Twitter saying, if we get Mike Williams when we could have had Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, or Garrett Wilson, I'm going to riot. And it's like, well, listen, man, it's very possible that none of these guys are available because, just because teams inquire or ask if a guy is available doesn't mean that those teams are actually making them available. Okay, so let's take a look at these guys individually. Let's start with the Los Angeles Rams and Cooper Kupp. So it's certainly possible, based on their record, why people might speculate the Rams might be looking to sell at the deadline. But it's a little bit tricky because Kupp still has 3 years on his contract, including this year. And I do think that LA wants to keep that combination of Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp together as long as they have Stafford at quarterback. And I think that the best way for them to piss off Stafford and for him to demand a trade out of LA next year is to trade away his guy in Cooper Kupp. I mean, we know that this combination that they have had has been legendary. I mean, they had arguably the best quarterback wide receiver duo season ever in the National Football League's history. All right, they won a Super Bowl together. Cooper Kupp won a game-winning touchdown pass from Matthew Stafford in their home stadium at SoFi to beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl. I do not think that Matthew Stafford wants to get rid of Cooper Kupp, and even though teams might be inquiring about him, I would highly doubt that they end up dumping him unless they also plan on dumping Stafford either this season or next offseason. Then we get to Deebo Samuel and the 49ers situation. They're currently 3-4, below 500 for a team that made the playoff or made the Super Bowl just last year, was a couple plays away from winning the damn thing. And now, they've got Christian McCaffrey on the bench due to injury. Brandon Ayuk is now out for the season with a torn ACL and MCL, by the way. God, that sucks for Brandon. Then the defense hasn't been playing all that great either. They've lost to some very beatable opponents. Now, I still think it's doubtful that the 49ers trade Deebo Samuel because they need him. All right, Brandon Ayuk's out for the rest of the season. Ricky Pearsall is going to be trying to come in here and try to, assume Brandon Ayuk's role for the rest of the year. But, I mean, Deebo is kind of that main offensive threat. I think that Kyle Shanahan really loves Deebo. And honestly, I think that the 49ers are probably hanging up on anybody inquiring about Deebo Samuel's availability right now. Then you get to the Jets, and as we know, after beating the crap out of these guys on Sunday Night Football, we know that this team's a mess. They're 2-5. Their only wins coming against the Patriots and the Titans, two of some of the worst teams in the league. And by the way, they didn't beat the Titans by all that much either. So when it comes to Garrett Wilson, a lot of people are like, he doesn't mesh with Rodgers. He's upset with the offense. Maybe he demands a trade out. But I'm going to say this right now, guys. There is no way that the Jets trade this talented of a player this young when they drafted him that high. All right, and if you're going to get him, you're going to have to pay an astronomical price that there is no way that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be willing to pay. Like, they're going to have to give up at least a first-round pick and change to get this guy, and I just don't think the Steelers would be even willing to entertain that at this point. So even if he is made available via trade, I highly, highly doubt the Steelers end up making a move for him. I definitely think Mike Williams is the more likely option. But let me know down there in the comments section, do any of these wide receivers get dealt this year? Do you think Cooper Kupp, Deebo, or Garrett, any of these guys get dealt this season before the deadline? Give me a yes or a no. For me personally, if I'm the teams, if I'm LA, if I'm San Francisco, if I'm New York, I'm not even considering it, and I'm hanging up the phone. All right, guys, that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Trade Rumors. I really do appreciate your guys' support. Of course, as long as the Steelers don't address this position, we're going to continue to get these videos out to you guys, letting you guys know the latest targets, the latest developing stuff, the latest on who the Steelers are targeting, all that great stuff. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button to never miss any of our free videos on the black and gold right here on YouTube.